Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Happy Monday. My name is Katie Earle. I'm the coordinator of the University Express program, and I work for the Department of Senior Services here in Erie County. And we're joined virtually today with Judge Penny Wolfgang, and very excited to have her give our talk for us. Before we jump into her presentation, we do have a lot of new folks on here today, so I'm just going to go over my quick little intro spiel. As you've heard, we do have a lot of people on here today, and you might think you're the only one, but I promise you you're not. And if you're new, you've already noticed that you don't have your video showing and you're muted and can do nothing about that. Those are just the settings for our program. You have not done anything wrong. And you heard me say that we are recording this session, and I will try to post it on our website at a later date. So throughout the judge's talk, if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and put those in your Q&A panel, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end of her talk today and that we have time for. So if you're new, how do you access your Q&A panel? Well, if you're on a computer or laptop, chances are that Q&A panel popped up on the right-hand side of your screen. You may just have to hit that little arrow or caret to expand it, and you'll see your text box, and you can send your questions right to me. If you're not seeing that up right away, if you look at the lower right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, you might see a square with a question mark. You can click on that. Or if you're on a tablet or smartphone, poke or touch your screen, your control panel will come up. You'll see a circle with 3 dots, and then you can click on Q&A. So we hope you enjoy yourself with us today. So I'd like to thank the sponsors of our program, which is my Department of Senior Services, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, Excelsior Orthopedics, and Vikemans for everything they do to make this program possible. And as always, please do not hesitate to contact us at Senior Services. If you have questions about program services or benefits, or if you're not even sure what you're looking for, please give us a call. We're at 858-8526. Now, let's learn about the star of the show today. And normally I would read the whole entire bio to you as a proper introduction, but I realized that I would give away some spoilers about Judge Wolfgang since she's going to be talking with us about her journey. So I will just read the first sentence that I have here, and then I'll turn it over to her. Judge Penny Wolfgang had a distinguished and respected legal career in our community, and we're going to hear about that today. So Judge, please take it away, and then let me know when you want me to put up your pictures, because I have those ready to go.
Okay, thank you so much. I am honored, speaking of honored, to be asked to participate in this. It's a wonderful, wonderful seminar and group that Katie has put together for you. And I myself have been most fortunate to have spent a good part of my career, a good part of my life, really, serving the members of my adopted community, which is probably one of the spoilers that we didn't want to tell you. And I'm honored to be asked to talk today. The reason I say adopted community is because I wasn't born and raised here in Western New York, as you might tell from my very slight New York accent. But I have lived here since graduating from NYU Law School, which was a few years ago. I'm trying not to give that away either, although everything about me seems to be public knowledge now, so you realize I'm pretty old. So people do always ask me as a follow-up, how did you end up here in Buffalo? And it is a simple but very old-fashioned answer. I met and fell in love with a man named Michael Wolfgang, and he was from Niagara Falls, New York, when I was in my last year of law school at NYU. And he had already established his practice and lived here in Niagara Falls, New York, in this area his whole life. So I did this really old-fashioned thing. I married him, I took his last name, and I came to live with him here in Western New York, pretty much in that order. And I've been here ever since. And it was a good decision. Matter of fact, I wanted to say that I'm not a very good, or maybe I should say admit, that I'm not a very good role model for women's lib or women's independence or any of the modern independent women movements, because I'm very old-fashioned, probably due to my age. And the reason I say this is because the reason I became an attorney to begin with is I listened to my father, which is pretty unique in this time to say something like that. But my father he was not a lawyer. He did not even have a high school degree. He got a degree at night school. However, he was the wisest, smartest, most wonderful man I ever met in my life. And he said to me when I was graduating from college, I said I wanted to pursue my major, which was theater, and try to be an actress. I told you we lived in New York, so there were opportunities, and I had done some acting for theater. And my father very, very tactfully said to me, well, and very farsightedly said to me, well, you might not be able to earn a living as well, sometimes, so you should have something to fall back on. Maybe you should go to law school because it's a really good education. Even if you don't become a lawyer, there weren't that many women lawyers then. Even if you don't practice, you'll have the education, you can get a good job with it, and you're a good student, which I was. So I just listened to my father. And so I went to law school, and I didn't regret that either, listening to my father. So father knows best. I wanted to throw that in. Remember that? Oh, when I started, women lawyers were just coming into their own, women coming into the field. So it wasn't a groundbreaker, and it wasn't the first this or the first that, too much. But women were pretty much, as lawyers, relegated to the back room. So they were doing research and writing motions, discovery things, and maybe meeting with clients, but definitely we're not in the courtroom very much at all. And doing what I call office work. And you could tell from the little I've told you about myself already that I was going to be an attorney and I was going to practice. I definitely needed to be around people and in front of people and doing some kind of courtroom activity. That was definitely what I wanted to do. And so I had an opportunity after being in private practice a little bit here, all in Western New York, to be associated with the Legal Aid Society of Buffalo and Erie County. And I think public service was my passion from the beginning. And I was fortunate to have an opportunity to work with the Legal Aid Society for several years and to practice serving the public, people who could not afford an attorney, both civil cases, landlord-tenant cases, and as a public defender. So I did get to go to court, which I wanted to do, and I did get to defend people in criminal matters, as well as I said, consumer fraud and civil cases. Well, while this was extremely rewarding, and I was really happy doing it. And while I was working at Legal Aid, the Bar Association asked the director, who was a wonderful man, if some members of the legal team would be interested in educating the public about their rights as their rights as landlords and tenants, their rights if they're arrested, their legal rights. And mind you, this was way before we didn't have the internet, we didn't have lawyer advertising, there was no such thing. And so they suggested that they could do a public service by letting the public know through the media, through TV and radio at that time, what their legal rights were. And of course, they asked me because, as it just pointed out to you, I'm a big ham, and I thought I was a great actress, and I was always wanted to be on stage. So this was a perfect opportunity to meld these two passions together. And so I did, and I started this series called The Law and You, which was very, very, very successful because people, as they didn't have ways of knowing their rights, the information that I was giving them, other than going to see an attorney. So it was, the media was very cooperative. It was a public service, and they use these Law and You segments that I did. And if you're somewhat older, if I am, you might remember, as I am, you might remember them. And they use them on radio and television and quite a bit, like to fill in spots like 3 a.m. and 2 a.m. And they were taped, of course, before. And people used to say to me, "Oh gosh, it's so amazing that you would get up at 3 a.m. and do this on the radio or do this on television," which I did take credit for, I will say, but I wasn't there. So because of this, and there was no Judge Judy, this was pre-Judge Judy. And I wish I was Judge Judy, and please don't ask me anything about Judge Judy. I'm jealous of her. I wish it was me. I wish I had thought of it. I would have been a really good Judge Judy, don't you think? So, but I wasn't. So, meanwhile, as I was on television and radio, some people just approached me, and I had nothing to do with politics whatsoever. My husband did, but I did not. And I wasn't active or anything in politics, but they approached me and said, well, you would be a wonderful judge because the people know you and respect you. And when they ask the public, tell me an attorney that they would like to represent them, they say Penny Wolfgang. So would you think about being a judge? And I thought that was really interesting way that I could be a good public servant and reach a lot of people and make a difference in a lot of people's lives. And so, as I said, I had not aspired. I really wanted to be an Academy Award winner. It wasn't like I grew up and said, oh, I want to be a judge. But it sort of did come along, and I did do it, and I did get elected, and I did become a judge for what seems like forever. When I did become a judge, I was not the first, but there were not too many women in criminal law, which is, I think I've mentioned, if not, that was really my passion, and what I was the most interested in. And in legal aid, I was the head of the appeals bureau, which did a lot of appellate work and writing. And after people were convicted, I went to the appellate division to try to see if their conviction was legal. So I was very much involved in that. So I got to be a county judge, which was specializing in criminal law, which I had known before, so it worked out very well. And there were not too many women judges in the county courts and doing criminal cases at that time. I wasn't the first, but I was one of the first. And for example, we had statewide county judges meetings and for education and for getting together and, with my colleagues in a hotel once a year downtown, downstate rather, in Long Island. So first year that I went there, they had a seminar, and I walked into the room, and I don't admit this, I guess I was a little late. I couldn't find the room in this big hotel. And I got there and I walked in, and the session had already started, and the judge who was conducting the session to the other judges looked up when I walked in, and he says to me, "Excuse me, miss, I think you're in the wrong room." So I said, "No, I'm not. I'm Judge Penny Wolfgang from Erie County." And all men, they were all men, and they all just stood up and they were, welcome, welcome. So I can't tell you any discrimination stories. It was pretty funny. The next night, they had a dinner, and during the day after the classes, we went to the pool, or the guys played golf, or relaxed in the afternoons. So I had been relaxing at the pool for two afternoons after the sessions, and I went to dinner. And one of the judges was online behind me for going to the buffet, and he said to me, he says, "Oh my gosh," he says, "you're a judge? We thought you were the lifeguard." So I said, "No, I can't even swim. No, I'm a judge." So I did have a couple of fun experiences while I was starting out in my career, but it got pretty well accepted, and there's many judges, and there were judges before me in all the level, women judges before me and after me as well. So, and Judge Judy, and I can talk about that again. People say, what is the hardest part of being a judge, particularly in criminal cases? And the hardest part of the whole job is the sentencing procedure, because a lot of the rest, I mean, it's dealing with people, of course, and knowing the law and setting bail and all of that. But when you come to the sentencing, it's me, myself, and I, a judge, sit before a jury. The jury makes the decision. The two lawyers are in front of you arguing each side. So you have to be fair and impartial and listen. But the lawyers are doing the work up until a conviction and the sentencing. Sentencing is my responsibility alone. And I take it very seriously. All of us do, of course, but it is most definitely and can be one of the most heart-wrenching parts of the entire procedure. And especially the cases that I had, because they were, as you may know, if you've followed my career at all, they were many high-profile cases involving violence and involving, I call it, all human emotions like rage and jealousy and anger and fear, and so they run the gamut. They ran the gamut, and then there is not only the actions of the defendant, but more importantly, even how it affects the victims and their families. So many people, I can't really wrap my mind around how many people's lives uh, I have affected, and hopefully in a good way, in the best way I know how, over the years. But sentencing is the hardest, definitely most hardest part of the job. In order to determine the sentence after a person is convicted, I have help under the law. I have, first of all, the guidance of penal law, which does set the parameters for sentencing depending on the crime. And of course, I should say that I've always been involved. I was not start in a city court or a town court, or any lower court, so I've always been involved. I've always been involved with serious crimes with serious penalties. And therefore, I do have the guidance of the penal law, and the penal law does set down the parameters uh, for certain crimes, depending on the nature of the crime. However, there is almost always discretion. It's very rare that it's a definite sentence. There's discretion for the court, for the judge, which there should be, because every case has individual facts. Every case has all kinds of individual motivations and people and stories, and it's good that the judge has discretion, and that the law doesn't say it's not a mathematical computation as to what the sentence would be. So it might be like 5 to 10 years or 20 to life, which is, as you can imagine, a wide range. And to start with, I do look at, and I do receive a pre-sentence report, and this pre-sentence report comes from the probation department. And it's very thorough. It tells me all about the background of the defendant, his family, discusses the elements of the crime itself, which of course I'm always familiar with anyway. And then it sometimes and hopefully includes a victim impact statement. And I also receive information from the victims themselves, like letters or people who were involved, and letters from and information from on the defendant as well. So I do have this pre-sentence report to help me, but I will say that is the most wrenching and difficult time. And I have spent nights and days and nights and time thinking and considering and worrying, I will admit, whether I did the right thing or not, but in sentencing. But I've tried, and I always do keep in mind that there is a higher court. I'm in a trial level court, and there are higher courts that also can review. So if I did make a mistake in the sentence or anything else, there are higher courts that can review what I've done. Now, I just thought, I think we mentioned before, that I would talk about some of the high-profile cases that I've had over the years. And I've been here so long, as you know, I can't even go back to think of how many there were in the past that received attention from the public and that had facts that were either heart-wrenching or upsetting to the public, involving dangerous people, involving, as I said, violent people. But I thought originally of the case that was from the 1990s, actually, and of course the names are not the important part, but it was a very, very, it was one of the most tragic cases that stuck in my mind forever. And the headline, which I still have from the paper, which I'll read you from the newspaper, was "Mixon found guilty of murder. Hamburg man convicted of killing ex-wife and children." And so you can see from the headline, if you don't remember it, I'm sure you probably don't, but the Mr. Mixon was divorced, and after a troubled 5-year marriage, and Mrs. Mixon and her children by her first marriage were 15 and 13 years old, and they died of smoke inhalation in a gasoline-fed fire in her home. And there was an 8-year-old who was the son of Mrs. Mixon and the defendant, and that person, that that child was not in the home at the time. So basically what happened is this man who was, we call it an OJ to the extreme. He was married, as you can see, in this troubled marriage, and would not let his ex-wife alone, and kept harassing her and following her and doing what people do when they're going through these situations, slashing her tires, calling her at work, doing all these harassment things to her. So this particular night, I went about 2 miles to her home. First, during the day, he went and took his own son back to his home, and he came back and to the residence where his ex-wife was, and he set the house on fire and committed arson, and both she and her 2 children died of smoke inhalation. So it was horrible, horrible tragedy and horrible case. And as I said, people always use it as an extreme, one of the many extreme examples of how domestic violence can escalate and get out of hand, and results in not just tragedy, but horrible murders and deaths. And it's, I hate to say, not even unusual. I also had, quite a while ago, a case involving a young boy. And I think it's interesting because I did have several cases where you don't think of it, but young boys particularly have attacked, assaulted their mothers, their fathers, or of course other people in their community. But the fact of it being a parent is always is shocking, and of course to everybody. And in this particular case that I had years ago, which was very well known, a 14-year-old boy, he attacked his mother. He beat his mother when she was sleeping with a crowbar, and then calmly walked across the Peace Bridge in Canada, and was found. The victim was bludgeoned to death, the mother, and died in the Erie County Medical Center a few days later. And 5 days later, the boy was found wandering around trying to steal a car, actually, over Fort Erie. And when he was arrested, he gave a fake name, and he was only 14. And they said, "Where are you living?" And he said he was, I don't know, homeless and was wandering street, and said he was from Canada, and told a lot of different stories, but they did find out who he really was. And because he was only 14, was very interesting as far as the legal ramifications go, because he could only be sentenced to a short period, like 5 to 9 years as a maximum, even for homicide, under the law because of his age. But within a year, the law was changed so that 14-year-olds and up could be charged with homicide and could be sentenced as an adult. And so he could have received an adult sentence if this had happened just within a year after that. But it could not, it's not retroactive, what they call, so he did receive. And I don't, also, in case you're going to ask me if I ever know, I don't know after I sentence the person, I don't know what happens to them. I don't know where they serve their sentence, I mean, or what happens in the correctional facility, or when they get released or anything like that. It's not my job. It's not. There's no way I can know. And the only way I do find out is in the situation where the defendant is truthfully threatening me or threatening the court in some way, and then the probation, parole, prison authorities, correctional authorities will let me know if somebody is doing that and is going to be released. But in most ordinary sentences, I don't know when they're released. I don't know how long their sentence is, and like I said, it's just not within my realm. Not too long ago, I think a case that people were very, very interested in for several reasons was what we call the Molly's Pub case. And that was received a lot of media attention for several reasons, not just the crime itself, but basically it was Molly's Pub is a place on Main Street here in Buffalo. Was, because I think it's been torn down since this incident. And some a group of young people in their 20s were celebrating, belonged to the National Guard in Niagara Falls, and they were celebrating a person's one of their birthdays, and they were drinking at this pub, and they were of age, and all of a sudden, the manager owner named Jeffrey Basil had words with one of this young Marine. Nobody knows what was said or what happened, but they had some kind of words or like an argument about something, and nobody saw it or heard, so I can't tell you the answer to that part. But Basil, he shoved this young man down the stairs, and he went propelling headfirst down the stairs, and fell at the bottom of the stairs and injured his head and was unconscious. And I guess the one part of the facts, which became very relevant, was that 2 off-duty police officers were working, which was permitted at that time, but not now, I don't think. They were working as bouncers or security, I guess you'd call it, at the bar. They went to the bottom of the stairs and dragged this young man unconscious outside of the bar up against the wall, and then laid him up against the wall, and then called the ambulance and the police and so forth. So not only did the young man die of these head injuries, but it always was an issue of if they had treated him there or if he had left him there medically, would it have made a difference if they had moved him? And it did become a big issue as what off-duty police officers were doing, and if that was the right thing for them to be working there, and also some of their cooperation, some stories that they told did not come out right as to the facts, so they were possibly one was lying to cover it up. And so because they were involved, as well as this wonderful young man and the family and the friends, it was just the most heart-wrenching tragedy, especially, I should have told you this before, especially at sentencing in all of my cases, where people, the victim, the family, is permitted under the law to speak in court and tell how the tragedy has affected them. And this was just, the young man was engaged, she was going to the Marines, he was just a wonderful person. And so it was a tragedy. And also there were a lot of legal aspects to that case, which I won't go into, but it made it ongoing for several years, let me put it that way. Finally, the, I guess, case that comes full circle, which is going to make the judge, a Judge Judy in TV land, is what they call the love triangle, the internet love triangle. And you might have heard about this because it's not only it was a TV story, it was like a 2020, one of those crime stories and all, because it's interesting because we would talk so much about my early cases where there was no internet. They solved the crimes by just old-fashioned police work and by interviews and by walking and knocking on doors. Well, now all of my cases in the last probably 10 years are solved by social media, by looking at Facebook, by going through listening to cell phone calls. They're all solved by going through the internet emails of the victims and the defendant and all. Well, in this case that I'm starting to tell you about, everything was pretend and everything was a matter of social media, and nothing was real except the victim. The victim was the only one that was telling the truth, and the victim was the only one who was not pretending to be somebody else on the internet that he wasn't. So this case is so well known, like I said, that the New York Times wrote about it. It was incredible because, as they said, he told her he was a young Marine recently back from Iraq. She said she was an attractive 18-year-old woman, eager to meet men, even if they were far from her West Virginia home. And as with most relationships born on the internet, neither was telling the truth. In reality, the man was Thomas Montgomery, a 47-year-old married father of two teenagers who had spent the last 12 years working at a factory in Clarence here. And his cyber lover from West Virginia was also in her 40s, but had adopted her daughter's identity, including the younger woman's email address and webpage, as her online persona. So, this is from the New York Times I'm reading here. They say no one would have been hurt, but the real world collided with the pair's middle-aged fantasies. So, a 22-year-old co-worker of Mr. Montgomery, the defendant, was shot dead one September night as he left the power tool plant where he was employed. And they go on to describe it, according to the police, the men's colleagues at the tool plant, Dynabride, said that the defendant frequently bragged of his online relationship with the supposed teenager from the time it began. And then the victim also was drawn into corresponding with the woman. Neither of them kept it a secret, but neither of them at the beginning knew that they were both dating this fake teenage woman. And the bottom line is, through jealousy and other human emotions, and due to the internet romance, they found out about each other. And this defendant, Mr. Montgomery, he went and was a sniper, and he went and shot as he came out from work one day, shot and killed the young innocent Marine kid that was dating his lover on the internet. Neither of them had ever met. None of them had ever met the alleged girlfriend, who was the mother, really, in real life. So the victim was an innocent person who was, from all appearances, a fine, upstanding young man who was putting himself through college. He was simply looking for friendship on the internet, and he ended up dying for it. So it was a terrible tragedy. And the ABC News because it doesn't seem like it should be it seems like a story that you see on TV, on Lifetime or something, but it really happened. And the internet, where they use names, to correspond with each other. The woman's name that she used was Tall Hot Blonde, and the defendant was Marine Sniper. And that was, and before I leave this and ask what, hopefully you'll have some questions. I cannot tell you how many people have said to me over the last year or so, when this case came to the media attention, how could they not charge the woman? Wasn't the woman responsible? The woman who was pretending to be her daughter and who was having this affair and making them jealous, and so wasn't she responsible? Shouldn't she be charged with something? And sadly, the law, the district attorney was asked the same question, by the way, and the police, sadly, I guess, the law does not provide any punishment for a person pretending to be somebody on the internet and having a romance, and assuming that she didn't tell him, go shoot him, which obviously didn't happen. She was not responsible. However, of course, morally, she was not responsible legally. However, you're all sitting there, I'm sure, saying morally that was certainly not the right thing to do. So I've had an interesting career and an interesting life. I've been very fortunate, as I told you. And during the time while I was, of course, on the bench and married to my wonderful husband the whole time, who brought me here until he sadly passed away a few years ago. And we have a daughter and a grandchild here. And during this time, I have been very active in the community. And so I've had opportunities to serve on many committees and for organizations that I'm interested in, that I have a passion for, and that I wanted to help. And especially, as you can see from my background, I've been involved with all of the community theaters, helping them to survive, and also Kelly for Kids. And I have, now is your time that I can show the pictures that you have, that of some of the people that there we go, that I've had a chance. Oh, the mayor, I always wanted to have, I will tell you, this is sort of funny, when I would be at various events in the community, they would make it somebody, some famous athlete or movie star, or somebody visiting, they would say, the mayor would say, this is William Fichtner's day, or this is Carol Channing's day. I would proclaim this if she was visiting or something like that. So when I got to retire, the mayor was so wonderful to me, and he named a day. He said, this is Judge Penny Wolfgang Day, and he had a proclamation, and he named it my day, which I was so excited about that I kept it. And then I was so disappointed to find out. I said to him, now every July, let's say July 3rd, I can't remember. Now that means every July 3rd is my day, is Penny Wolfgang Day, right, Mayor? And he said, no, sadly, just this day. So I've never gotten over that. I really feel bad. Then, but I was excited to have the one day. Then we have, I know, a picture of some political figures that yes, that is me, but I don't know how I got short hair, but that is Bush, I don't remember that, President Bush and Governor Pataki. And when they came, I was fortunate enough to meet them and have my picture taken. And I think it had to do with a ceremony for a charity here in Western New York, but still it was very exciting to meet them in real life. And then, oh my gosh, so I showed my friend Jim that helped me with this, with some photos we had in the basement. And of course I thought he would have no idea, because he's young, of course, who this is, but you probably know it's Liberace. And I swear that's me, and it's not a wig or anything. I must have had like a lot of hair, and a gown that was borrowed from an actress here in town. And we were at a place called Melody Fair, and he was Liberace was entertaining at Melody Fair, and there was a series where people in the community got to introduce the shows each month. And they called me and asked me if I wanted to, if I would introduce Liberace. And of course, I got to meet him and listen to him and see the show, and it was very exciting, and he was really nice. He was very kind, very gracious, and it was really fun. And that is really me. So as we all know, the wonderful Jack Kemp, and I worked with him on many committees, and he was just an outstanding person, an outstanding citizen. And when my daughter, who I mentioned, and went to American University and in Washington, and then worked in Washington on the Hill for a while. She interned for Jack Kemp, and she also said what a wonderful person he was, and he was very helpful in my career, and he was very, very helpful to all of us here in Western New York. So then, of course, I've spent 20, well, let's see, I guess it's 30 years as a director of the Kelly for Kids Foundation. I always tell them I'm their token woman, which I pretty much was the whole time. But this is, I have everything to do with Kelly for Kids Foundation has been very, very important in my life. There's so many fundraisers, and we've helped so many people. We've raised millions of dollars for children here in Western New York for various organizations. And I think that's Dan Marino. And then we all know Tim Russert, and I kept my association with Tim Russert through the media to begin with, because I was doing some interview shows for the community relations, even while I was on the bench. And Tim Russert was involved with the station that I was working at while I was doing it. And he was just, I guess, the most fantastic person. He had one of them that we've had in Western New York that we were fortunate enough to have, only not long enough. he weren't together long enough, but there he is. And I think that might be the end. Well, there's hundreds more, but I'm going to take it. But I didn't want to bore you with every detail of my life. So I wanted to tell you thank you so much. First of all, I hope it's been interesting spilling all of my secrets that about my life to all of you, my friends here in Western New York, and thank you for that. I've had the opportunity to talk to you and to serve you, and it's been my pleasure. And I thought maybe if you had some questions, I'd be glad to answer them if I can, or if I haven't already. So.
Well, Judge, thank you so much for your presentation, everything you did for the community and continue to do for us. And we have quite a few questions here. If I may go ahead and get started.
Yes, please.
Okay, so the first question I'm seeing is, was your husband supportive of your legal career?
I would not have been any, I would not have succeeded in one step of my career if I did not have my husband behind me. He was he was everything in my career. He started out by he sacrificed everything for my career. He started out by saying to me, if you're not happy at this job, why don't you try this? Every job, every position that I had when I first came here, I went from a big salary to a little salary to a lesser salary. And he said, you're the only one I know that just goes from one job to another and makes less money. And he was totally, totally supportive. And I will say that he was the idea of the judgeship was totally Michael's idea. He said to me one day, everyone's talking about this. You'd be a great judge. You'd like it. He did all of the things behind the scenes. When you heard about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I don't put myself, in the category of this iconic woman, but when she talked about how her husband, helped her get where she is, I had tears in my eyes because I thought that's me. That was my story. And he did the things that husbands do when they are helping with, behind the scenes. Like my daughter, Robin, I only have one child, but she always says, to me, she says, Daddy is the one that came to all my tennis matches. You never came. You never came once. So Daddy's the one that did this, this, and this. And it's true. He really did. So, and he ran all my campaigns, and I wouldn't be here without him. Wouldn't have been accomplished what I did.
That's really wonderful, Judge. Next question I'm seeing is, when you first started law school, did you know right away that you wanted to be in public service?
I hated law school. I thought it was so totally boring. And I wanted to quit after the first year, but I wrote my father a letter, and I went to the University of Michigan for my first year on a scholarship before I went back to NYU, to my home. And I wrote my father, this is really, I don't like this. This is so boring. And also, I was the only one of three at the University of Michigan. I was one of three women in my class out of 300 men. And although my mother thought it was great, I could meet a husband, which didn't happen. I thought it was very awkward. And so no, I didn't know about public service at the beginning. I only knew that as it progressed, and of course my father wouldn't let me quit. He said, "You're not a quitter, and you're not leaving. You're not coming home, and we're not sending you money to come home from Michigan. So stay there and finish the year." And I did. But I think towards the end, I knew that I was not going to be interested in commercial, in working for a commercial law firm, or in doing business. Or I always had a passion for working with people and helping people. And so I would say by the end of law school, I thought about public service. And then when I started, I really knew that I wanted to be at legal aid or something helpful to the community.
Thank you, Judge. Next thing I'm seeing is, could you comment on the president's legal challenges to the election results?
It's over my pay grade, but the little, and I don't know, and I've always been a state court judge, so I'm not very, don't know that much as the law and federal courts, which most of the challenges are, although some of them are in state courts. But no, what I've read and what I've seen, I don't think there's any merit to it. I don't think there's any merit to any of the claims, and I don't think they're going to be sustained.
Okay, thank you. Next thing, what was your favorite thing about being a judge?
Well, one of my favorite things about being a judge was marrying, being able to perform weddings. And I know other people can perform weddings, but judges can. And so I had so many times where relatives or people I knew or cared about, or were related to somebody, I got to perform their weddings. And so that's something you didn't think about, but I love that. And my other favorite part, I guess, about being a judge was my interactions with the attorneys, having the chance to meet all these really well-prepared, educated, interesting, dedicated attorneys on both sides of the cases. And I really enjoyed over my career the different personalities, the different abilities, and I met some of the finest attorneys that practice, especially here in Western New York. So I think that was pretty much my favorite part of that.
That's really neat, Judge. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
We have several more questions here. Is it okay if I continue?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I know you're the one who normally interviews, so I just want to make sure.
Yes, I know.
Okay. The next thing I'm seeing is, how did you deal with the stress of the job?
Well, I don't drink. I never drank. I think I dealt with the stress of the job by, first of all, we've talked about him a million times, having my wonderful husband who always, could calm me down and could, get me to think about other things or to put it in the proper perspective. And that was one thing. And the other is by my still loving the theater and going to all the community theaters and being active with their seasons and with their plans and supporting them and raising money for them, as well as the other, like I told you, Kelly for Kids. And so I did deal with the stress by trying to get away from the law and the cases and do something that was more, I want to say, entertaining, fun, and also reading, but like junky fiction books, not serious books. And I also have always been to I've always exercised. So I think I relieve a lot of the stress by going to classes, exercise classes, which makes me sad talking about that now at this time. So those are some of the things I did.
Good to know. I'm sure you needed a lot of different things for an escape every now and then. Next question. Could you comment on the appearance that our legal system is tilted to favor wealthy defendants? For example, O.J. Simpson and Trump.
Well, people say that, but the examples that we give, and O.J. Simpson and Trump are two good examples. I think that the O.J. Simpson case, that it wasn't so much that it was favored because he had money, because he was wealthy. I think it was because he was a famous personality, and people are very much influenced in their mind by somebody's, probably the same thing applies to Trump, by somebody's status or a fame, if you want to call it. We're very addicted. I mean, look at me showing you pictures of people, me and famous people. I mean, everybody always thinks that somebody who's famous like OJ, that they're just excited. Even the judge in that case, he acted like he was so excited to have a famous football player as a defendant. instead of, I mean, here's a very poor example of what a judge should be in a case like that. So I don't know if it's favored, but I think it's just human nature that people are impressed with the person's fame, or usually money goes along with fame. As far as the money issue goes, yes, there is something to be said for the fact that if you have money, you can get out on bail, uh, as it was, and that's why we've been making bail reform lately, so that money was not as much of an issue as far as releasing people on bail. And as far as getting an attorney, hiring an attorney, if you have money, you can hire the best attorney, obviously, in the world. So it has some influence, but it depends on the situation, and it depends on who you're asking. What I mean, I would ordinarily, for example, it certainly wouldn't influence a judge that the person has money, except in the Ito situation I told you what that was so rare. So it probably does a little.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Next thing I'm seeing here, in the case of the 14-year-old, did the boy receive any mental health care along with his sentence?
Yes, yes. As a matter of fact, the headline, which didn't get to read to you, was mental health, right here. It's a mental test, face son of slain mother. So before they even, when they caught him and they arrested him, they gave him mental tests, they gave him psychological treatment. And yes, when he was incarcerated, yes, obviously. The answer to that is yes.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Next question. So how did you end up sentencing Mr. Montgomery?
Mr. Montgomery was sentenced to the maximum that was permitted for that section, for that conviction, under the law, which I'm pretty sure was 25 to life, which I'll explain to you means that he has to serve 25 years, and then whether he gets released anywhere after that is up to the parole board. And that's what we call an indeterminate sentence, and that was pretty much the maximum that was permitted.
Okay, thank you. Actually, the next question was, could you explain a life sentence to me? I've never understood how it works.
Well, you're not alone, and it's a very good question. We do have a sentence. We do not have the death penalty anymore, but as you know, on and off over the years, we have had it in the law, but we do not have it in New York State. So the maximum that a person could get is life, and it works pretty much like I said. But most of the time, the sentence is something to life. In other words, I just told you 25 to life and 20 to life, 15 to life, whatever the case may be. And then the question of whether the person is there for life is up to the parole board. However, for the most egregious, like killing, there's a certain killing a police officer, a law enforcement officer, there are very few where the sentence is life with no parole. And that means the person is there for life. It's just as it says.
Okay, thank you, Judge. We have about a handful of things left here in about 5 minutes. Is it okay if we continue?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
I'm so happy that people have questions.
I know, this is awesome. So the next thing I'm seeing is, I know you represented the county, but this question refers to the new city law enacted this summer relevant to issuing appearance tickets for nonviolent offenses rather than an arrest specific to Class C felonies. Many are not showing up on their appearance date.
Yes, yeah, yes, I totally agree with you. I do not agree with most of the bail reform issues, and that is part of the bail reform law. And I feel that it took away the discretion from the courts, and in the very examples that you're giving, and the police are hindered too by this very example that you're giving. they cannot like give arrest for certain, minor crimes. They cannot really arrest a person physically. They have to, under the law, give them an appearance ticket. And yes, many of them are not showing up. And then all it does is make twice as much work. First of all, it's a danger to the community because they're out. If they're not showing up in court, they're possibly and usually committing other crimes. And number two, it just makes more work. We have to go get a warrant, find the person again, finally bring them into court. I am against a lot of the idea that a lot of the sections of this bail reform that changed what used to be the discretion of the court. So if the person and of the judges and the police. So instead of giving a ticket to a person who is a repeat offender, there's somebody who is a shoplifter who that may seem like a minor crime to you, but shoplifting from some store, leaves, is caught. They give him an appearance ticket. The next day he's shoplifting or she is shoplifting again. And the next day doing the same thing. Whereas if he was brought to court like we had before, and I saw this person and I looked at this person's record and I would say, well, you're not good. I'm not releasing you without bail. I'm not giving you an appearance ticket. You're just going to keep doing this. And you've done it before and you do it again. So we'll set bail and we'll keep you in custody unless you can put up the bail to show that you're going to appear. So I just feel like it's gone too far, the bail reform, which is what you're talking about, the appearance tickets. Also, they should be very limited in when they can do that, and when the police can give an appearance ticket or must give an appearance ticket. And they also should have the right to arrest a person physically when they feel like they're either a repeat offender or dangerous to the community. And right now they can't.
Thank you, Judge. We have a couple comments next. We have thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
We have amazing presentation, and I have nothing but the highest respect for you.
Thank you so much.
We have wonderful, very interesting presentation from a lovely lady. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next question. Were there New York cases where someone was convicted and later turned out to be innocent after being in prison?
Yes, there have been. There have been a few in Erie County. Fortunately, I never had such a case. I think I would be very concerned. But yes, there have been about a few. But I do want to say that considering if you look at statistics, and I know we're talking about people and their lives, but I do want to say that if you look at statistics, you will find that it must be 1% of 1% of 1%, and math is not my forte, my strong suit, but it's very few. One is too many, I'm sure, but it's very few. And I don't think it's an indictment it can be an indictment of the criminal justice system or of the trial courts, or definitely not up in New York, our area. We've had so few, but there have been a few.
All right, thank you, Judge. I'm just seeing two more questions here. Were you ever involved with Crane Library on Elmwood Ave in Buffalo in the late 50s?
Probably as a patron, because I'm I'm on the board of Williamsville Library. It's one of my passions, and I've been to all the libraries, probably going there, but I don't know what other involvement. Maybe you saw me there. Maybe I was getting a book.
I'm not sure. But the last thing I'm seeing is, did you ever teach?
Yes, my mother wanted, when I told you about my father, but I should have told you about my mother. She wanted me to be a teacher or a nurse. And I didn't do either one. And I don't, and my sister's a teacher, by the way, I have a sister. But I did teach in the law school. When I first came here, I taught a writing course at the law school. And I have taught at the what they call the police academy, where judges and lawyers have giving like penal law and information and that kind of thing, but not in the school. Or I left it up to my sister.
Good to know, Judge. Well, I'm just seeing a bunch of thank yous. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story with us. So with that, Judge, thank you again. This was a blast. I hope you enjoyed it. And to everyone who was here, thank you for being on.
I'm so grateful for all of the people that took time out of their lives to come and listen and to participate and to ask these wonderful questions. And it was a pleasure almost meeting all of you. So bye now.
Yes. All right. Well, with that, everyone enjoy the rest of your